9 spine-chilling true stories from the haunted night shift that will expose your worst fears. Clara Johnson had always believed in the strength of her instincts. As a 28-year-old nurse, she was accustomed to the cold, sterile halls of New Haven Hospital, where life and death swirled in tandem. But the night shift, once a sanctuary, had morphed into a twisted labyrinth of dread. It started slowly, a whisper here, a shadow there, but the warning signs grew louder until they clawed at her sanity. Clara found herself racing through darkened corridors, her heart pounding, every flickering light a warning, every hushed voice a scripture of doom. It was just after midnight, the usual quiet of the hospital sliced by the frantic beeping of machines. Clara picked up a chart, her fingers trembling, and glanced at the patient list. Each name made her stomach churn, as if the breath of death lingered just behind her. And as she walked through the unnervingly empty halls, she could almost hear it, a soft, ghostly murmur begging to be heard. It twisted into her thoughts, made her question her purpose. Colton, vital signs fading. A nurse whispered through the haze, echoing the uncertainty that loomed in the air. Colton had been a young man with hope now shattered, a recent visitor to the graveyard of lost souls that the hospital seemed to harbor. Glancing over her shoulder, Clara noticed a shadow flickering just beyond her line of sight. She shook her head to dismiss the dread creeping in, trying to focus on her duty as a mother, a protector. Her 2 young daughters waited at home, blissfully unaware of the darkness creeping into their lives. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The whispers grew louder after that, swirling in the air like smoke, suffocating her resolve. Every night, Clara tried to shake them off as the remnants of her exhaustion, but with every passing shift, something shifted inside her. Reports of patients dying unexpectedly piled up alongside an eerie history of disappearances linked to the grounds beneath this very building. Shadows lengthened in the corners of her vision, transforming familiar hallways into haunted passages of memories long buried. She needed to expose the truth, but her frantic theories fell on deaf ears. The other staff brushed off her fears, exchanging worried glances that twisted her insides. The respected hospital administrator, a mentor she once trusted, wore a smile that now felt like a facade masking deceit. Clara's pulse quickened. Could he know more than he let on? The shadows thickened around her, pulling her deeper into their nightmarish waltz. The walls felt like they were closing in, the lights flickering like ominous signals, warning her of the horror still hidden beneath. On an especially oppressive night, Clara stumbled upon an old case file, crusted with dust and secrets. Each fading photograph whispered the name of a family lost to tragedy, their faces frozen in time, their fates tied to this forsaken hospital. As she pieced together their story, a chilling realization boiled in her gut. The connection was so close, it made her heart race with fright and fury. Each dying patient echoed their fate. Suddenly, the overhead lights buzzed before dying, leaving Clara engulfed in darkness. A cold breath brushed against her neck, leaving her paralyzed with fear. The whispers crescendoed, begging to tell their stories, their despair clawing at the edges of her mind. Heart racing, Clara spun, but the only thing that stared back at her was the void. The terror had fully manifested, and she might be its next victim. What awaited her in the shadows? Would she uncover the truth before death claimed her too? Clara's breath hitched in her throat as she stood alone in the encroaching darkness. The cold air deepened around her, wrapping like icy fingers around her chest, squeezing every ounce of courage. Somewhere in the shadows, the fragmented whispers twisted into incoherent wails, drowning her in terror. "Help, help us!" the words floated through the gloom, scraping against her sanity. She stumbled backward, heart hammering. Those voices, whose were they? In the pitch-black void, Clara's mind raced. She could no longer differentiate between reality and nightmares. Each flicker of memory tried to break free. The flowers at her daughter's last birthday, the cheerful laughter echoing through their home, those sounds felt worlds away. Clara. The distorted voice of her colleague, Sarah, echoed from further down the hall. Clara's heart leaped. She was not alone. Hope flickered like the failing lights around her. Clara, where are you? Desperately, Clara stumbled towards the voice, each step a battle against the weight of the darkness that entangled her. The shadows pressed closer as if hungry to consume her whole. Over here. She called, straining her voice against the heavy silence. Footsteps approached, but they carried an unsettling rhythm. Not the hurried pace of a worried nurse, but something heavier, more deliberate. Clara's blood ran cold. No, no, it couldn't be. Suddenly, the dim emergency lights flickered back to life, and she felt eyes upon her, cold and unforgiving. Sarah stood at the end of the corridor, but her expression wore a veil of something unnatural, a fear that sank into Clara's bones. Clara, don't! Sarah screamed, her eyes wild, darting left and right as if she could see something creeping toward them. Get out! Now! But it was too late. The oppressive atmosphere choked Clara, and she felt a pull, a magnetic force urging her to the heart of darkness that seemed to pulse beneath the hospital's floor. What is happening? She yelled, desperation edging her tone. From the depths of the shadows, a figure emerged, its form indistinct yet terrifyingly solid. It wavered like a mirage but gave off a sense of sinister awareness. Clara could feel its gaze stabbing into her, stripping away the layers of her resolve. Your time is near. The thought surged through her mind, pregnant with dread. Run! Sarah cried, breaking Clara from her trance, shattering the spell of the lurking horror. Clara turned, her instincts taking over. She sprinted down the corridor, but shadows clawed at her ankles, tripping her up, dragging her back toward the darkness. She fled. The walls seemed to close in with every frantic step she took. Behind her, the echoes of cries rose again, beckoning. Clara. With every ounce of willpower, she raced toward the nearest door marked exit at the end of the hall. Her hands trembled as she reached for the handle, reflecting the chaos within. Could she escape? Would she even find her way back to her daughters? Just as her fingers brushed the cold metal, a loud crash behind her sent her heart plummeting. She hesitated, looking back, but the figure was there, darker than the night, a swirling mass of pain and suffering. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, pulling her toward the abyss of despair. Clara knew she had to make a choice. Leave the darkness behind or face whatever malignant force was looming over her. As she clung to the decision that could seal her fate, she felt a cold hand wrap around her wrist, sending shockwaves of ice coursing through her body. What choice would she make? Would the truth engulf her completely, or could she wrestle something from the clutches of the hospital's wicked past? In that moment, time froze. Clara was on the brink. The darkness whispered her name, promising answers, but at what cost? Everything hung in the balance. Would she confront the horror or become just another story lost to the night shift? Clara's heart hammered as the icy hand around her wrist tightened, its grip like iron. She gasped, her breath escaping in ragged puffs, and recoiled from the sensation of something cold and unyielding invading her personal space. Let go of me, she screamed, thrashing, but the shadowy figure held firm, its energy a void that swallowed her frantic movements. The pull from the exit seemed to whisper sweetly, but the alluring light dimmed against the creepy aura of the entity looming over her. In that moment, time warped. Seconds felt like hours as dread coiled within her. Clara's mind flashed to her daughters. Were they safe? The thought tethered her to life, to fight back against this terror. I want to let you take me. With a surge of determination, she wrenched her arm free, dislodging the grip of despair. It stumbled back, as if temporarily shaken by her fierce will to survive. She dashed toward the exit, adrenaline surging, but each hurried step felt like running through molasses. The shadows expanded, stretching like strings to ensnare her. Behind her, the figure let out a sound that was neither male nor female but a visceral blend of agony and fury. The air thickened as she threw open the door and the glare of fluorescent lights flooded her senses. She stumbled into the reception area, her every instinct screaming to keep moving. The hospital was quiet, but an eerie stillness hung in the air, as if it had witnessed clandestine horrors. Clara glanced back, heart racing, but the door slammed shut behind her with a sickening finality, sealing her in a liminal space like a cage. "Sarah," she called, hoping for a familiar face in this nightmare, but her voice echoed back mocking, hollow. The reception desk lay deserted, leaving Clara feeling exposed, like a moth drawn to a flame, risking everything. Where had Sarah gone? Just then, the lights flickered, and shadows loomed, pooling like ink. Clara's skin prickled, she could practically hear the sigh of the building breathing with an ancient weariness. Those whispers from before began to swirl in her mind once more, now clearer, more insistent. Join us, panic tightened her throat. She pressed her back against the wall, searching desperately for an escape. A small hope ignited within her. If she could reach the upper floors, maybe there was a way out. She sprinted toward the stairwell, the door creaking ominously as she pushed through, the sound circling her like a predator. Halfway up the dim staircase, she stopped, every instinct screaming that she was not alone. The chill crawled up her spine as she heard it, muffled cries from above. "Help us, please!" Terror gripped her anew. Who was up there? What was reaching for her? The fear of the unknown wrapped around her heart like a vice. Should she go back? But returning felt like walking into the gaping mouth of a beast. Clara shook her head, forcing breath into her lungs. "I have to see," she murmured. With each step, the air grew heavier, saturated with dread, yet she pressed on, curiosity devouring her fear with every hesitant tread. Emerging onto the upper floor, she was met with darkness thicker than before. Her heart pounded. Should she scream for help or listen for the source of the cries? The moment hung suspended, the shadows danced in front of her like taunting phantoms. Just as she pondered the next move, a hand reached out from the void. Not shadow, but flesh cold and clammy. Clara gasped, recoiling as the icy grip latched onto her arm. "Don't leave us," a voice whispered, weak and pleading, echoing against the walls of despair. Now trapped between foolish curiosity and an overwhelming sense to flee, Clara faced a harrowing choice. But just who or what had her curiosity drawn her to? What hidden truths lay entangled in these spirits' cries? Clara steeled herself, determination clashing against the fear creeping under her skin. Would she discover salvation or uncover a dark truth that would shatter everything she knew? The voice sent a shockwave through Clara, paralyzing her for a moment, the icy grip still holding tight. "Don't leave us," the whisper echoed again, the words wrapping around her like a fog. Who were these people? Why were they here? The terror gnawed at her stomach, but the pleading sounded genuine. "Please," it rasped, that voice clawing at her heart. She forced herself to look closer. Amidst the darkness, shadows swirled like smoke, revealing glimpses of faces, their expressions twisted in agony, eyes wide with fear, mouths opened in silent screams. Clara's breath quickened as she realized they were not here to hurt her, they were trapped, just like her. "Help us!" Another voice joined the chorus, this one sharper, filled with desperation. The cries poured in from all directions, creating a cacophony that rang in her ears. It was as if the building itself wept for them. Torn between fear and empathy, Clara breathed deep, trying to steady her racing heart. The exit she had sought now felt like a distant memory, smothered by the shadows that danced mockingly around her. "Who are you?" she shouted, her voice trembling. "What do you want?" "Freedom," the first voice replied, barely above a whisper. The grip on her arm tightened. Clara could feel the chill seep into her flesh, as if she was being pulled into their realm of despair. She recoiled, fear squirming within her, and wrenched her arm free. A moment of clarity pierced through her terror. She would not become one of them. No! She cried defiantly, scrambling back and nearly tripping over the threshold. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows creeping closer as if affronted by her rejection. But in that instant, she heard it again, "Help us, before he comes." A shiver of dread coursed through her veins. Who? She dared to ask. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. The shadows paused, as if waiting for something. The air grew colder, and a familiar sense of dread knotted her stomach once more. Then, the darkness shifted, a figure forming amid the shadows. It loomed larger than before, its features obscured but its presence unmistakably sinister. Clara's heart raced as she realized it wasn't just shadows anymore, it was something corporeal, something purposeful. "They want you to join them," it rasps, its voice like gravel scraping against iron. "But you're not dead yet." Clara stumbled back, panic flooding her senses. "No. I need to get out of here." She turned, her instinct kickstarting a wild flight down the corridor lined with the screams of despair. Each footfall echoed against the linoleum, a mournful drumbeat in the empty distance as she burst through doors, tearing around corners, desperately seeking refuge. Her mind churned, but clarity pierced through the fog. What if they were all lost souls, bound by their unfinished stories? What if she was destined to uncover their fates? Distant echoes beckoned her, familiar yet unsettling. She sprinted toward a dimly lit hallway where flickering bulbs barely illuminated the signs that read patient recovery. Clara skidded to a halt, a wave of nausea washing over her. "Do I help them and risk becoming trapped?" she whispered to herself. "Or do I run and leave them behind, just like everyone else?" Suddenly, the temperature dropped further. A voice groaned, a malevolent whisper of a man whose suffering seeped into her very bones. "You don't have time, he'll be here soon." Clara seized her breath, the oppressive air choking her as the shadows twisted and turned, hiding whatever horrors lurked beyond her line of sight. She had to decide, to act. The spirits cried out for her to reason with her own survival. What awaited her if she chose the other path? With the entity closing in, Clara rallied her fear into determination. "What do you need from me?" she shouted, every ounce of dread electrifying the air. But the shadows reacted, writhing violently, preparing to seize her fate. As darkness clawed at her fiercely, whispers became a storm, swirling around her like a chorus of damning truths. But the moment of decision was now. Would she become the savior of the lost, facing whatever horror awaited? Or would she flee and hope to fight another day? Time slipped through her fingers like sand as a figure emerged, an imposing shadow behind her. Clara realized, with a dawning horror, that her choices were about to create waves much larger than her own fate. The darkness coiled around her, preparing to strike. Would she break free from this nightmare, or was she forever marked by the terror that awaited? Clara could feel the chill intensify, the shadows vibrating with anticipation. She turned, heart hammering beneath her ribs, to face the looming figure. It was indistinct, a swirling mass that flickered like a candle's flame, but even against its obfuscation, she could sense it was alive with malice. "Do you know what death feels like?" it growled, its words gusting like wind through the leaves. Each word sent a shudder through her, igniting a surge of primal terror. She willed herself to respond, to summon words of defiance, but nothing could escape the tightening grip of fear. "Stay away from me!" she shouted, panic writhing in her throat. As if in response, the shadows coalesced, snapping forward like a fleeing animal, hungry for its prey. "Help us before he comes!" The chorus of voices returned, each note fraught with despair, each anguished echo pulling at her heart. They clawed at her thoughts, drowning her rationality beneath a tide of sorrow and dread. Clara stole a quick glance around. There had to be a way out. The corridor seemed to widen, merging into a hellish expanse that felt like the bowels of a monstrous creature. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but she held her ground, desperate to understand this nightmare. "Who is coming? Tell me." The figure lurched closer, its shadowy arms reaching, grasping. Moments stretched like eternity as Clara's breath quickened again. She could hear the slow, deliberate thuds of footsteps. A dark pulse reverberated through the floor, reverberating like a bell tolling in warning. "They're trapped, Clara. Just like you. Save them." The voice chilled her as it seemed to slither across her arms, wrapping around her neck. Join their struggle or be consumed by his wrath. Clara hesitated, the weight of the choice crushing. At that moment, a vision burst in her mind, flickering images of lives lost, stories left untold. Their faces swam before her in an array of grief. She had worked so hard to escape her own demise. Could she really save those lost souls? No! She shouted, a fierce vengeful spark igniting in her chest. "I will not let you take me." With that declaration, she broke into a frantic sprint. Each step pounded against the floor, urgency becoming her only ally. Behind her, the figure roared, a guttural sound that echoed through the corridor as though the very walls could disintegrate from its fury. The cacophony of lost souls rose in unison, drowning her in a harrowing chant. "Why do you fight? You cannot run from death." Clara dashed into the first open door she saw, heart racing, lungs burning. She burst into an empty room, a stark contrast from the chaos outside. Pale light filtered through grimy windows, revealing tattered curtains fluttering listlessly. But the moment of respite was short-lived. The shadows bled in after her, swirling like a tempest. Clara pressed her back against the wall, breath hitching, her pulse roaring in her ears. She had to be smart, to strategize against an enemy that thrived on fear. "Where are you?" she whispered, voice trembling yet defiant. The shadows coiled restlessly around the edges of the room, waiting, hungry. "What do you want?" From the darkness, a quiet voice emerged, "He wants your soul, but you can save us." Clara felt nauseous, the reality of her decision bearing down on her like a weight. With each breath, she tasted the metallic tang of dread. If she helped them, would she claim her own freedom, or become entwined in the dreadful fate she sought to escape? An echo of the footsteps returned harder, closer. Clara's blood ran cold. He was coming. The door rattled violently. Terror clawed at her throat, her heart racing with relentless panic. She was running out of time. In her spinning mind, the whispered words churned dangerously. It's not too late, but what had she stepped into? Would standing her ground mean doom for her and them? As the knob twisted and the door creaked, Clara's choices hung like a noose around her fate. Would she confront the darkness waiting to burst through, or join the souls trapped in despair? The answer lingered just out of reach as darkness writhed, closing in. The door swung open with a sharp creak, revealing a man silhouetted against the dim corridor light, his face obscured in shadow. Clara gasped, instinctively shifting away from the doorframe as he stepped into the room. A wave of despair washed over her. This was the figure, the dark presence that had haunted her every breath. "I found you," he said, voice low and ominous, carrying the weight of countless lost souls. The room began to feel smaller, the walls closing in as his words wrapped around Clara like barbed wire. She could hardly breathe. The shadows surged forward, twisting and curling around his feet, eager to embrace him. He was a creature birthed of darkness, his frame all sharp angles and voids. The whispers swelled louder, desperate cries mingling with her panic. "Clara, save us!" the chorus beckoned, their voices rising like a tidal wave, crashing against the shore of her sanity. "No, I can't!" she screamed, retreating to the farthest corner. The chill in the air thickened, crawling over her skin like icy fingers. The figure took a step closer, and every instinct in Clara screamed to flee, yet her legs felt like lead. His eyes glinted, two pits of nothingness, staring straight into her soul as though he could see the very essence she fought to protect. "You think you can escape? You're more like them than you know." A sick feeling knotted in her stomach. Were they truly trapped? Was she? "Join me, Clara," he coaxed, voice slick like oil. It's already too late for them, but not for you. Help us set them free. Why should I? The words cut sharp and raw, splattering doubt. What is stopping you from taking me instead? Fear. He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed off the room's walls. You're afraid to embrace what lies within. They all were. Clara felt the truth in his words like a dagger piercing through the fog of her thoughts. Images flashed in her mind, each lost face, each desperate attempt to save a soul that had already sunk into despair. She took a step back, trembling. I won't lose myself like they did. Then you will perish. His smile twisted as the shadows danced around him, thick and hungry. You can't outrun your destiny. Before she could respond, the ground vibrated beneath her, sending ripples of panic through her core. The whispers grew deafening, each voice a haunting reminder of survival and sacrifice. What choice did she have left? Was she really just prolonging the inevitable? The figure lunged forward, shadows reaching out like claws, eager to tear her sanity apart. Clara's instinct kicked in. She found the courage to bolt past him, ducking beneath flailing shadows. In a blinding rush, she burst back into the corridor, racing down the corridor. The sound of her heartbeat drowned out the clamoring voices. She couldn't stop. The walls seemed to close in, the laughter growing louder, the shadows converging in pursuit. Clara! Don't run! The shadowed figure's voice rang out, dripping with malice. But at that moment, she saw a flicker of light at the end of the hall, a faint promise of hope. She sprinted towards it, adrenaline surging like wildfire, desperate to escape the dark maw that threatened to swallow her whole. Yet just as she neared the light, something strong seized her from behind, dragging her backwards. She cried out, the light flickering out like a dying star. Darkness engulfed her once more, the tangible weight pressing into her lungs. Help us, before he comes. Echoed in her mind as the shadows closed in tighter. In the suffocating dark, a terrible realization dawned. The souls might be her only hope, but at what price? Moments away from facing the truth, she felt a surge of energy coursing through her veins. Would she let herself succumb to the fate that awaited her in the darkness, or would she dive into the abyss, seeking to rescue the damned? As she was pulled deeper into the shadows, Clara understood that her battle was far from over. The real nightmare was only beginning. What he had promised would become her legacy could also become her salvation or her complete undoing. The choice lay before her, and she could feel the darkness whispering its own seductive promises. But could she trust it? Clara's heart raced as she fought against the unseen grip dragging her farther into the void. The shadows clawed for her, an almost sentient mass, intent on pulling her down. Waves of panic surged through her, cold and clammy like death itself. She gasped, struggling to scream, but no sound emerged. Let go of me. She felt her voice crackle against the pressure, each word seeming to vanish into the dark around her. Do you still think you can outrun your fate? That mirthful voice taunted, echoing all around, its source lost in the suffocating blackness. Just when Clara thought she would be lost forever, a sudden flash burned bright in the darkness, a memory or perhaps a fragment of her consciousness fighting back. She recalled her mother's words, whispered in nights filled with fright. You must face the darkness, Clara, not run from it. The thought wove through her, a thread of hope. With a fierce determination, she turned inward, confronting the shadows that whispered lies of hopelessness. Just then, she felt the grip on her tighten, the shadows thrumming with malicious intent, as if sensing her resolve. The voices morphed into sharp, mocking laughter, all around her, dissonant and chaotic, each note draping over her like a noose. Foolish girl! They shrieked, you're already one of us. Not yet. She shouted, the defiance igniting her spirit. Using the last reserves of her strength, Clara pulled away from the shadowy tendrils. She focused, channeling all her fear into one colossal burst of willpower. The walls trembled in response, flickers of light battling the encroaching dark as if nature herself was at war. Boiling anger surged within her, and for the first time, she embraced the dark power beckoning her. The shadows pulsed against her skin, cold yet familiar. "I will not be lost to you," she cried, feeling a powerful energy course through her veins like fire. Suddenly, a rift formed in the darkness, revealing a flickering scene flashes of those she had lost, faces entreating her with desperate eyes, her brother, her friends. "Clara, save us," they pleaded, their faces melded in agony, yet also hope, and it hit her, the voices haunting her, the darkness wrapping around her. It was their pain shaping the echo of despair. "I can save you," she shouted, reaching her arms into the vision. "But I'll need your strength." With that, she felt them threads of their spirits, slipping and swirling, merging into her being. Uncertainty washed over her as she struggled to harness their pain. Memory after memory infused within her, carving indelible lines of agony and warmth. The shadow figure's laughter morphed into confusion. "What are you doing?" he snarled, anger cutting through the laughter. Her surroundings brightened, the shadows hissing like a scalded creature backed into a corner. Clara took a step forward, empowered now, as whispers of the damned joined her voice, a single entity filled with raw bewitching strength. "I will stop you. I will set them free," she declared, the culmination of terror and hope radiating from her. The resonance broke through the layers of dark filaments, illuminating the corridor around her. As the shadows recoiled, she felt a sliver of fear, a chink in her armor. What if she couldn't contain it? What if they turned on her? But the longing in their eyes propelled her onward, each flicker a reminder of resolve over despair. Clara surged forward, stepping into the light at the end of the corridor with the power of each spirit fueling her. The figure laughed, but the sound was now one of panic rather than triumph. "You think this is the end?" he hissed, and smoke curled, spinning like a hypnotic serpent around Clara. The light flickered, and she could see something shifting in the darkness, an even greater threat taking form behind him, the true horror beyond the shadows. The swell of dread twisted in her gut. In that moment, she understood. The fight wasn't merely for her life, it was against something far more insidious than just a dark figure. Was she strong enough to contain the power of the damned and survive what lurked in the heart of the abyss? As the light flickered one last time, a chilling realization hit her. What if the darkness had only just begun to awaken? And what lay beyond was hungry for her surrender. Clara's breath turned shallow as the smoke enveloped her, constricting her like a python tightening its grip. The laughter from the figure rang out again, and this time it clawed at her sanity. She could feel it, something was awakening, a presence she had yet to comprehend. The shadows writhed and twisted, forming shapes that flickered in and out of her vision. A cold sweat trickled down her back, pooling at the small of her spine. "What are you?" she yelled, desperation lacing her voice. "You'll know soon enough," the figure replied, a grin stretched across his face, splitting his features like a jagged crack. As the smoke receded, the scene behind him unfurled, a vast, swirling abyss that seemed to breathe, sucking in light and life. "Join us," the voices hissed, now clearly separated from the figure. It was a chorus of torment, echoing off the walls of her mind. "Become one with the dark, I refuse," Clara cried, standing her ground. She felt the power coursing through her veins, fueled by the spirits tethered to her. They whispered their fears and hopes, each voice adding to her strength. But within her confidence lurked doubt. What if this was a trap? She focused on the faces that had flickered in her mind's eye. "I will save you," she repeated, though her heart trembled. The shadow figure advanced, looming closer, his laughter morphing into a growl. "You think you can stop what is destined to consume you? The darkness is a numbing comfort, embracing you until you lose all hope of light." Clara clenched her fists, feeling the anger boil anew. The darkness surged towards her, coiling, seeking to crush her spirit. With a fierce concentration, she pushed back, sending pulses of light rippling from her core. "I reject you." Her voice rang out, a song of defiance against the encroaching shadows. The ash-gray tendrils reared back, hissing at the light. "No!" They screamed, the sound piercing her skull like 1,000 needles. She could feel their fury, a maelstrom of rage clawing at the edges of her mind. You don't know what you're doing. Yet Clara pressed on, deeper into the light, feeling emboldened. The faces of her loved ones shimmered before her, surrounded by the haze. Help me! She shouted. I need you now. Light erupted from her, forcing the darkness to writhe, slashing at shadows like a sword. The figure screeched, retreating, frustration bleeding through his expression. You cannot hold this forever, child. You are only delaying the inevitable. But Clara could feel the spirits gathering. They swirled, coalescing around her like a shield. Together. She cried, pulling their energy into her, forming a barrier against the darkness' advance. Her heart thundered in her chest, the pulse of inherited fear mingling with bravery. Just as she thought victory was within reach, the ground quaked beneath her feet. The rift behind the figure widened, fracturing reality itself. Shapes began to emerge, an array of figures stretching, twitching, like grotesque marionettes in the dark. Clara's stomach turned as dread clawed its way back in. They twisted, ever closer, their mouths opening in silent screams, their eyes lifeless voids. Look! The figure howled, tapping into the last remnants of her unease. This is your future. You're one step away from joining them. With horror, Clara recognized the forms creeping from the abyss. They were the lost souls whose pleas had ignited her resolve. They were the forgotten, consumed by despair, twisting in the darkness she fought against. I will save you. She shouted, but doubt clawed at her mind. Was this power she wielded enough? The ground threw her to her knees, shadows slithering closer. The weight of desolation pressed against her chest, suffocating. Just as she thought she would sink, she met the gaze of the one spirit she recognized, her brother, eyes wide, mirroring her own fear and hope. Clara, he mouthed silently, don't give in. With renewed purpose, she felt the light within flicker stronger, pushing back against the shadows, but the void only seemed to smirk, twisting beneath the weight of hope. And then, the true horror emerged from the depths, a shape that defied understanding, a creature that thrummed with the cadence of despair. Where it stepped, the ground went cold, laughter twisted in the air, and Clara froze. What had she truly unleashed upon herself? The darkness had not only awoken, it was eager to claim her. But was Clara brave enough to face the ultimate terror head-on? Uncertainty clenched around her heart. Would the spirits she fought for rise again, or would they drag her down into the depths of despair forever? The darkness before her pulsed like a heartbeat, each thrum tethering Clara to an abyss that promised oblivion. The creature loomed closer, its form shifting, a kaleidoscope of despair and malice. She could see its features, if they could even be called features, flashing in and out of existence, like a broken film reel in a dimly lit theater. Clara, her brother's voice echoed, twisting around her like barbed wire. You need to fight, but his spirit flickered, caught between the realms of hope and despair, battling the pull of the void. She gritted her teeth, sweat stinging her eyes. I won't give in. Clara declared, raising her light-fueled hands. The warmth surged, pushing against the cold that draped the room like a shroud. But as if fed by her defiance, the entity intensified, stretching its shadowy limbs outward, subtly encircling her. Yes, hold on. A chorus of familiar whispers urged. Clara could feel the spirits surging around her, calls of the lost igniting her determination. The horns of despair blared loudly, but she wouldn't falter. In that moment, she vowed she would stand firm. The ground beneath her cracked, splintering as though the world couldn't withstand the strain of the battle between light and dark. The creature's laughter echoed, a sinister symphony that played on her deepest fears. You think you can save them? It taunted. You are nothing but a flickering bulb in a storm. Clara's frame trembled, but she echoed back, I am strong. I will not be extinguished. The shadows recoiled momentarily, on the verge of retreat, but quickly lashed out. They were indignant, anger weaving through the air as they snapped at her, attempting to snuff out her resolve. Suddenly, the form of her brother emerged through the chaos, his presence bathed in light, a defiance to the darkness that fought to claim his essence. "Clara, please," he begged again, his voice stronger now. "You have to believe in yourself." With that spark igniting within her, Clara summoned every drop of courage. The spirits that had once been lost in the void now danced around her like constellations in a night sky, urging her onward. She felt the warmth of their hope blending with her own despair, swirling into a force that felt almost tangible, now aimed straight at the creature. "Look at me!" she screamed, reshaping that fear into something wickedly powerful. The creature paused, momentarily caught off guard by the ferocity in her voice. But the smirk didn't dissolve, it transformed, sharpening into malevolence as the creature lunged forward, a mass of dread racing to consume her. Clara's heart thundered in her chest as she released a powerful surge from her hands, directing it towards the creature. Light erupted in a brilliant specter of flame, causing the shadows to screech. Pain rippled across her skin as the tendrils rebounded, and agony clawed at the edges of her consciousness. Yet inside that pain was strength, the strength of the lost, the call of her brother, the voices of every forgotten soul intertwining with her own pulse. She would not be consumed. Never. The chaos reached a fevered pitch as the darkness writhed violently, battling against the beams of light now piercing through its core. "You cannot win," it hissed, a cacophony of growls and cruel laughter melding together, growing louder, thicker. But as its voice fell into despair, Clara's frenzy reached an apex. "No! I want to let you take them." Rippling energy exploded from her, sending waves crashing into the darkness. And in that blink of an eye, the shadows shrieked, but Clara was blinded by brilliant light. When the brightness ebbed, Clara found herself standing alone in an empty void. Breathless and heart racing, she glanced around, dread unfurling in her chest. Where had they gone? The spirits that once surrounded her were gone. "Clara." A whisper cut through the silence, but it was not her brother. It was far more sinister, slithering and full of shameless glee. "You're just beginning to understand what true darkness is." What had she unleashed, and was it too late to turn back? The void trembled with the weight of oppressive unknowns as shadows began to seep back in, coiling around her ankles. Did she truly have the power to face this? Did anyone even know she was still fighting? The answers floated just beyond the edge of reality, tantalizing yet out of reach. Could she hold on to what was left of her hope before it too was swallowed whole? Clara steeled herself, the specter of dread looming again. But now it was no longer about saving others. This was about saving herself and understanding the price of survival. Clara could feel the walls of darkness creeping ever closer, tight and unyielding. The whispers slithered through the void, taunting her, each voice echoing her own fears, as if the shadows were drawn to her very essence. "Clara, you can't escape," they beckoned, swirling like a tempest, casting doubt into her mind. Would she truly stand against this crescendo of despair alone? Panic coursed through her veins, but beneath the choking dread, a flicker of resilience flared. "No," Clara murmured, shaking her head as if to dismiss the suffocating grip of negativity. With each breath, she pulled forth the remnants of strength she had buried deep. "I am more than your plaything." As if heeding her proclamation, the darkness faltered, pulling back like a tide. But it surged forward once more, the shadows forming an arrogant shape that taunted her. "You think that your light can hold me back? It's a flickering flame against my storm." With urgency, Clara pressed her palms together, willing the warmth she had felt earlier to rise within her. She thought of her daughters, their laughter a melodic memory. She envisioned their faces, innocent and bright, like guiding stars piercing through the oppressive dark. "I will not bow to your fear," she cried, a defiant roar echoing through the void. The shadows rippled at her words, a moment of hesitation. She took a step forward, heart hammering, fueled by love and determination. "I will face you," she shouted. "Not just for me, but for every soul you've trapped." The malevolent chuckle of the entity grew softer, almost curious. You are brave, little nurse. But bravery can lead to foolishness. What will you sacrifice? I'll sacrifice everything. Clara gritted through clenched teeth, fire igniting in her chest. She felt her surroundings shift, consciousness spreading out like an expanding universe. Stars glittered around her, memories intertwining with the love she held, illuminating every shadowy fragment. Let go. She ordered the swirling mists. I do not fear what you claim. And as she spoke, the very threads of shadows began to fracture, splintering like brittle glass. With every shout, inch by inch, light broke free, forcing back the dark. The entity howled, rage and surprise mixing in a symphony of despair. Black tendrils lashed out toward her, but her defenses held strong. Clara felt the warmth of 1,000 souls surge with her, spurring her on. If I fall with light, she stated, her voice rising against the cacophony, and I will drag you to the depths where you belong. The entity retreated, a visceral fear unmistakable in its stance. Clara pressed on, feeling the intensity of her own spirit converge into a fierce brightness. A radiant energy ignited the space around her, staving off the chill of hopelessness, the memories of anguish morphing into tendrils of assurance. I will fight for you all. Her light boiled over, a tornado of brilliance against the encroaching dark. As those chains of despair roared in protest, Clara felt her heart stabilize, a newfound power uncoiling. Each whisper disintegrated before her, the essence of every lost spirit driven by her determination. Then, with a thundering finality, the figure fell away into dust, vanishing into the ether, unraveling like a bad dream. Clara stood, breathless, at the center of an infinite void, no longer surrounded by despair but bathed in warmth. Echoes faded, leaving a comforting tranquility behind. She had reclaimed not just her life but unleashed the souls lost in the dark, empowering them in unity. Clara. The familiar voice pierced the silence, sweet and clear. She gasped, her brother materializing before her, alive with warmth and illumination. You did it. Tears flooded Clara's eyes as love surged through her soul, the weight of despair finally shedding its grip. In that moment, she understood, light had triumphed, not just for her, but for every spirit she had championed. I'm so glad I found you, she whispered, embracing the warmth around them. Together, hand in hand, they stepped into the light, where shadows could never thrive again. As Clara felt joy swell in her heart, she knew they had crossed the line from darkness into hope, breaking the cycle for all forgotten souls including herself. With a last glimpse behind her, Clara smiled, a profound peace washing over. The night shift would never torment her again, she had emerged victorious, and now she could finally return home. Thoughts of her daughters filled her with profound bliss. Mommy's coming home, she whispered, ready to embrace the life that lay ahead. Now, dear friends, this is where we need to connect. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss out on more gripping stories just like this one. Smash that like button now to let me know you're with me and help feed the algorithm with passion. Flood the comments section below with your hottest reactions and theories about Clara's adventure. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to witness this thrilling conclusion. Your actions count, so let us keep the momentum going.